Neil Diamond is not just a pop-rock legend. He is the heartbeat of America, the living soul of a country that found its voice through his songs. He gave the world Sweet Caroline, a song that rings out through sports stadiums, touching different ages of people who know about love and loss, becoming a song that will never die about happiness and memory. But behind that amazing voice is a man who has walked through really hard times that very few people could ever live through. Rising from a poor boy in Brooklyn, climbing from pain and people saying no to him to become one of the most loved singers and people who write songs in history. 2 marriages that ended, kids who lived far away, and a feeling of being alone so heavy that being famous could never make it better. Every hurt, every night he couldn't sleep, every tear. He turned into music to help millions of people's hearts feel better. Even as his own heart was hurting, he didn't just perform. He gave his heart on stage, turning pain into art, sadness into loyalty, and sorrow into something special. But then, when the stage lights went away, fate hit him with its final blow. At 84, Parkinson's has been cruel, turning the final years of his life into something really sad. Don't look away, because what he is going through now may be the deepest, most painful part of this legend's life. And if his music has ever touched your heart, leave a like as a way to honor the man who gave the world everything and still has never stopped giving. It's mean how some lives begin with heartbreak long before the world even sees it. Some hearts are born with cracks too deep for childhood to fix. And Neil Diamond's was one of them. His story didn't begin with being famous, but with quietness. The kind that comes through thin walls, humming in small Brooklyn apartments where dreams are given out like bread in small amounts. The world would one day call him a legend, but in the beginning he was just a quiet boy trying to survive between the sounds of war and the heaviness of his parents' fears they didn't talk about. He was born on January 24, 1941 in Brooklyn, New York, as the world was tearing itself apart in World War II. His parents, Akiba Kiev Diamond and Rose Diamond, were Jewish people who moved from Russia and Poland. 2 souls who carried faith in their hands and hunger in their pockets. His father sold dry goods door to door, chasing nickels through the cold, while Rose kept the household held together with prayer and being patient. Winters were mean. The wind came through cracks in the windows. The heat barely worked. The family moved from one small apartment to another, never staying long enough to plant roots or catch their breath. Neil learned early that nothing stayed. Not warmth, not safety, not even love's gentle touch. When his father had to join the army, the weak calm of their small world broke into pieces. Rose gathered what little they owned, holding her 2 boys close as she got on a train going to Cheyenne, Wyoming, a place so big and strange it might as well have been another planet. There were no familiar voices, only the sound of the wind and the pain of being far away. At night, while his mother fixed clothes under a dim light bulb, Neil walked into the local movie theater. He sat for hours in the dark, watching the singing cowboys on the screen, their voices steady, their hearts not broken. Those songs reached him in a way words never could. That's where he learned that a song could make feeling lonely sound beautiful. Years later, he would look back and say softly, "It wasn't an easy home, but it was filled with love and a lot of silence. I think music became the way I talked to the world when words didn't work." When the war ended, the Diamonds came back to Brighton Beach, where salt air mixed with the sweat of working families chasing the same uncertain dream. The boy who had watched his father disappear into uniform now watched the ocean and wondered if he'd ever belong anywhere. He was shy, quiet, always watching. The boy who felt everything too deeply. While other kids played stickball in the streets, Neil wrote poems on scraps of paper, trying to turn confusion into something clear. Then at 15 came the miracle, a $9 guitar, a gift from his parents that they could barely pay for. It was chipped, didn't sound right, but to Neil it was like being saved. He sat for hours in the light of a single lamp, teaching himself chords until his fingers bled. The guitar wasn't a toy. It was a lifeline. It gave his silence a sound, a way to change pain into something the world might understand. That same year, he wrote his first song, "Hear Them Bells," for a girl at school. What began as a teenage crush became something special. The understanding that music could make him feel seen even when no one was looking. By 16, his grades had gotten worse, but his spirit had woken up. The son of a door-to-door salesman, the child of people who moved here who had lived through war and need, Neil Diamond had already learned the difference between hunger and desire. He wasn't starving for food. He was starving for meaning. And in that hunger was his destiny. He was just a small boy from Brooklyn holding a guitar too big for his hands. And somehow it fit him perfectly. Every legend begins somewhere small, but few begin in hunger. For Neil Diamond, the road to music was not a path with applause, but with silence, rejection, and the cold bite of being lonely. The same boy who once whispered songs into the walls of a Brooklyn apartment now faced the hard question every dreamer must answer. How much pain are you willing to carry for what you love? In those early years, survival was like an art form. He counted coins in the shadows so no one would see how small his dreams had become. Sometimes he pressed his guitar against his chest, not to play, but to feel something warm. The city didn't feel sorry for him, and he didn't ask it to. He just kept walking, his hunger louder than the noise of New York. In 1958, the world expected Neil Diamond to become a doctor. He had earned a fencing scholarship to New York University, studying medicine with a steady hand and an unsteady heart. While his classmates memorized body charts, Neil's mind drifted toward songs. Between classes, he'd sneak away to Tin Pan Alley, guitar in hand, knocking on the doors of publishing houses that smelled of cigarette smoke, ink, and big dreams. "Can I play you something?" he'd ask, voice shaking with hope. Most days the answer was no. The kind of no that doesn't just close doors, but dreams. Still, he returned the next day and the next. Every rejection added another brick to his determination. Every door that slammed a reminder that the only one left open was the one he built for himself. By 1960, he made a choice that changed everything. He walked away from college, just 10 credits short of finishing, to take a $50 a week job writing songs at Sunbeam Music Publishing. It wasn't a job. It was taking a chance with fate. $50 to chase a dream in a business that chewed up and spit out hopeful people like him. The office was small, the piano didn't sound right, and the winters were cruel. He wrote until his hands hurt, his stomach empty, but his heart full. Too sad, they said. Too strange. He was too honest for a business built on copying. When Sunbeam let him go, Neil found himself drifting in Manhattan. Young, broke, and invisible. His world shrank to a rented room, his hope to a whisper. He lived on 35 cents a day, enough for coffee and a roll if luck was kind. Some nights he walked the streets just to stay warm. He slept where the city forgot him, above Birdland, in a dusty storage room that had jazz sounds from below. He'd sit at a broken piano, his breath making fog in the air, and play until his fingers bled. "I wrote," he later said, "because I had nothing else." Every no became a scar, and every scar became a song. In 1962, Columbia Records offered him a small lifeline, a single called Clown Town. It sank without anyone noticing. Another door closed. Another piece of pride lost, but he kept going. Failure had become a familiar companion, one he carried like a shadow. Then in 1965 came the spark that kept him alive. "Sunday and Me," a song he wrote for Jay and the Americans, broke into the top 20. For the first time, the world sang back his words. It wasn't fame yet, but it was proof. Proof that pain could be musical. Yet even as light broke through, darkness stayed around. Signing with Bang Records brought success, but also chains. They wanted sugar. Neil would later say, "I gave them blood." He wanted truth. They wanted hits. He wasn't built to fake it. Not in song, not in life. Through the hunger, the cold, the silence, Neil Diamond learned the hardest truth of all. Art is born from being alone. Out of rejection came who he was. Out of sadness, beauty. The boy who once sang to survive had finally found his voice. In that lonely room above Birdland, his breath freezing in the night, the first notes of Solitary Man began to take shape. He wasn't rich. He wasn't famous. But he had done what few ever could. He had survived the city that eats its dreamers alive and turned its cruelty into song. He once sang in the dark. Now the world lit its candles for him. The same man who had written songs in freezing rooms above Birdland now watched his songs pour from car radios and jukeboxes, from wedding halls and neon bars into the everyday rhythm of America. But even as applause got loud and fame wrapped its shiny arms around him, Neil Diamond began to hear something quiet and scary in the silence between the cheers. His own heartbeat, heavy with loneliness. The louder the world sang his words, the quieter his soul became. It began in 1966 with a song that wasn't even meant for his voice. I'm a Believer. A pop hit written for the Monkees exploded across the world. Over 1 million copies sold before it even got to store shelves. In one moment, the unknown songwriter became the builder of something huge. But fame has a mean habit of leaving its makers in the shadows. Neil's words made strangers fall in love. Yet he still walked home alone through the flickering light of Manhattan, his shoes soaked in winter rain. I was happy for them, he later whispered. But I knew I had more to say. My own story. That story bled out of him in Solitary Man. It wasn't written for radio. It was written for survival. Every rejection, every empty night, every note carved out of hunger became a confession in sound. It didn't make him famous. It made him real. By 1969, America found its song. Sweet Caroline. 1 hour, one hotel room in Memphis, one moment of understanding, and a tune that would ring out for half a century. He'd written it for the innocence of a child. But what came out was a song for everyone, a celebration of hope that refuses to die. When he first performed it, something sacred happened. The crowd didn't just listen. They joined in. A single voice became thousands. It was magic, Neil said years later. They made the song theirs. From that night on, Sweet Caroline wasn't just music. It was a tradition of belonging. Stadiums erupted, wedding halls shook, and strangers linked arms in harmony. Yet for the man who wrote it, each joyful chorus was followed by the echo of being alone. The world found unity in my song, he said softly, while I remained the solitary man behind it. The 1970s made him king, but even kings bleed. Cracklin' Rosie, Song Sung Blue, Beautiful Noise, America. Every record flew higher, every show louder, every stage larger. The world saw fireworks. He felt fire. At the Greek Theater in Los Angeles, 1972, he performed 10 nights to roaring crowds. Hot August Night became like gospel, selling 2 million copies and staying on Australia's charts for 2 years. But behind the curtain, the man who gave joy to millions would fall into a chair, covered in sweat, his chest breathing hard. You give all of yourself every night, he said. And when it's over, there's nothing left. His dressing rooms were silent churches of being exhausted. Makeup half melted, the mirror fogged with breath, his reflection barely recognizable. The applause roared outside, but inside Neil only heard the hum of the lights and the faint shake in his own hands. Before he could breathe, Broadway came calling. The Winter Garden Theater, 20 sold-out nights, the first rock artist ever to conquer a stage meant for Sinatra. Columbia Records gave him a $5 million contract. An unimaginable fortune for a boy who once ate on 35 cents a day. But glory, as always, demanded blood. Neil rehearsed 12-hour days, rewriting lyrics until his fingers hurt, singing until his throat was torn up, recording until dawn blurred into daylight. His back ached like it carried the weight of every note. I'd look in the mirror, he later admitted, and not recognize the man staring back. I was chasing perfection, and perfection was killing me. When Hollywood came calling, he couldn't resist the promise of a new canvas. Jonathan Livingston Seagull, 1973, was supposed to soar. Instead, it crashed. The film flopped, losing millions. But his music took flight, winning him a Grammy and the world's praise. Yet even in winning, he tasted bitterness. The director had cut and rearranged his songs without permission. It felt like watching someone edit my soul, he confessed. Betrayal stung worse than failure. From that day on, he promised never to make another film unless he had full control. But fate has a mean sense of humor. By 1980, the jazz singer came calling. Hollywood offered $3.5 million, the highest salary ever paid to a first-time actor. He took it, knowing full well the risk. The movie failed, critics made fun of it. But Neil's songs, Love on the Rocks, Hello Again, America, rose like phoenixes from the wreckage. They can laugh at the movie, he told reporters, but they can't touch the songs. Yet that fighting back hid the truth. The tiredness was eating him up. Decades of touring, performing, and creating had ground his body down to its limits. He sang through fevers, through back pain so bad it left him gasping between verses. His team would find him backstage shaking, whispering, "Just one more show." And then came the night the music almost stopped.